Hello. Well, it's been a little while since my last video. It took a lot out of me, quite frankly. It wasn't that it was difficult to make, it just poured out of me, but psychologically, I was finished for days afterwards. However, back to, well, we're still in Afghanistan, and I want to discuss my worries about what's happening there beyond the human misery. Of course, that stands apart in horror. But I want to prove to you that an unholy alliance is brewing there. It's being carved out by the Chinese, the Afghanis, and the Iranians. And I'm going to prove that even before we have anything actually written down. This is not political speculation. I'm going to give you some solid proof. But it's not proof that's set out in the same way that we set out proof in the West. So I'll start with an explanation of why I changed my mind about a complete abandonment of Afghanistan. I don't believe that the presence of Western troops will change the society. I don't believe it will turn that place into Holland. But I do believe there should be some presence there. Of course, that's not going to happen now. They're all getting out of there. But I think it's a mistake, and I'll tell you why. You see, since this whole business started, I've learnt a bit more about this benighted country. And I want to start off by quoting to you something said by Rory Stewart, who was a minister in the Conservative government until 2019, and he now teaches at Yale at the Jackson Institute for Global Affairs. He's had a lot of life experience. He wasn't just a politician. He was an explorer and a military man of some sort. So, he knows quite a lot about these sorts of things. He points out that the argument that Western forces have been there for 20 years, so it's time to go, makes little sense. The American army, for instance, he said, had been in South Korea and is still there for the past 70 years. And no one talks about pulling them out of South Korea, do they? Admittedly, South Korea is a much more pleasant place to stay. It's a more civilized place, and the people are obviously much more amenable to taking on the modern world. But even so, it is a military presence, and there's a general agreement from both parties, that is, the South Koreans and the American army, that it's working well. As Stewart says, the Allies have been in Afghanistan for only 20 years. Now, and also there have been no deaths recently. There was, an equilibrium had been reached. Secondly, when I was talking about the retreat from Afghanistan, about 3 videos back, because it was a retreat, definitely. It was a rout. When I saw the chaos, I did suggest that perhaps the Allies could have kept some sort of a garrison there. And the more I think about it, the more I think that that was a good idea. And for this reason, it isn't the power that an Allied garrison might wield. It's the power that an Allied garrison would prevent others from wielding, like China and Pakistan and Iran. And, well, even Russia, although for reasons I shall detail in a bit, perhaps they don't have the same leverage. Okay, so back to Iran. In the normal way of things, Sunnis and the Shiites are at each other's throats. But I believe that over Afghanistan, considering the riches it contains, the Iranians might swallow their principles, as if they ever had any at all, and cooperate. And I'm going to show you proof that this is exactly what's happening. And then there are the Chinese. Now, Afghanistan would make a splendid pathway to and from China. Possibly not with roads and railways, but certainly with a pipeline. Here's a map. China is at present building a huge port in Gwadar in Pakistan. Can you see how easy that makes the shipping of goods by train to Gwadar and then the shipping of oil on the return journey? That's through Pakistan. You'll notice that at present the railway, well, it's in a straight line the length of Pakistan. But what if they could cut across Afghanistan? That makes it even shorter. Now, Pakistan is a little difficult. It's a bit more civilized than Afghanistan, but it is having trouble in the Gwadar area from Baloch separatists. Wouldn't it be really useful to China if China could lay an oil pipeline through Afghanistan straight into Iran? And do you really think the Taliban would turn down that sort of an opportunity and accept the Chinese money? Do you think they're really worried about their fellow Muslims in China who are being murdered and ethnically cleansed? Well, no, they couldn't give us stuff, and that's the truth. So that's the background. China is very interested in Afghanistan. They've got that railway going down to Gwadar, which will help them ship goods into the ports there to go up the Suez Canal and into Europe. But a pipeline across Afghanistan would be extra insurance, wouldn't it, for their need for oil. And now I'm going to present to you the proof. But first, I'm going to point out a difference in the way Western societies and, well, Muslim societies think. Modern Western societies don't really believe too much in patterns, in iconography and in symbolism. I mean, we have it all, but we don't really think too much about it. It's not that relevant. That's because people in the West, in Western Europe, we read. So we've ditched the symbolism idea in favour of the words. We are more word oriented. Muslim societies, on the other hand, are very pattern oriented. They're actually pattern oriented to a degree which I think is unhealthy. It's my argument, for instance, that this is why so many Muslim societies, from the littlest communities in suburbs of British towns here in the West to entire countries, they're so prone to conspiracy theories. I don't mean one or two nutcases, I mean the whole society. I seem to remember an American ambassador who was talking to a Syrian ambassador, and it was a woman. Was it the UN ambassador? Anyway, she said that when this Syrian ambassador had finished talking to her, she was sure he was psychotic, he was mad. She was sure he was mentally ill, but he wasn't. He was just joining up dots that shouldn't be joined, like people in the West are discouraged to do. So in Muslim culture, you see portents and meanings in random sets of information that most people in the West don't take any notice of, except perhaps for people we consider the lunatic fringe. I'd say that's an important and crucial difference between the mindsets of Muslim and Western Christian civilization. And my theory is that it's a feature of groups of people who don't read very much, if anything at all. And in such societies, of course, symbols become far more important. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Yasser Arafat, the leader of Fatah, the original Palestinian thing in the West Bank of the Jordan, he always wore his headscarf like this. And you may think that's a very strange way that the scarf drapes down the side of his face, but it's not an accident. It's actually, he's arranged it in the shape of a map of Israel, including the West Bank and Gaza, the whole lot which he claimed as Palestine. It was a symbol, and every Muslim who saw him or a picture of him would have recognized and understood that symbol. In a similar way, when Rashida Tlaib was elected to Congress, someone made a portrait of her. Do you notice how that scarf she has round her neck is also encircling the Capitol building? I doubt many have noticed this, but any Muslim would notice it straight away and understand it. They'd understand it immediately. Well, it would be as clear as if Tlaib had been reading out a document of intent. Now, let's look at another piece of Muslim symbolism. Here's a picture of a Taliban leader. Now, what's his name? Khalil al-Rahman Haqqani, having a photo op with Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, the leader of the Afghani Hizb Islami, the political party, the Islamic party in Afghanistan. So they're having a photo op and, all chummy. So far, so dreadful. Now, you see them sitting in their chairs. But what's that between them? On the shelves, behind them, at the back. I want you to take a look at this. Well, here on the right, there's some sort of framed document. I don't know what that is. It's either paper protected by glass and in a frame, or it's a metal sheet or ceramic or something. The light's shining off it, so I can't tell you what it is. So I can't give you an opinion about it. However, moving on to the center, there's a plate with a picture of an Iranian cleric on it. It's not a very good picture. Again, the light's not that good, but I suspect it's Rouhani. And there he is in image, mediating between the Taliban and the Afghani politician. I don't think it's there by accident. And what isn't there by accident as well, on the left, a Chinese vase. This is telling a whole story and nobody is talking about it. And if there's anything that should be prompting the Allied forces to go straight back into Afghanistan and set up some sort of garrison there, this could be it. Of course, that's war. And I don't think anyone's going to do it. But that's a bad sign there. And nobody's saying anything about it. Well, but me. Oh, please click like and subscribe if you're not subscribed. And I'll see you in the next video. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.